Welcome back. We are live this morning in Washington, D.C., and I am sitting right now in a Fox Business exclusive with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. And Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, we were talking about the broad economy. I want to ask you your thoughts on the shutdown, because the CBO says that the shutdown caused $11 billion impact to the economy, $3 billion of which is completely lost because of the 35-day shutdown. Your reaction?
Maria, Kevin Hassett, the CEA, is working on final numbers for us. I think his view is that there's no question that there was some cost, but those costs will be recovered as money comes back into the system. I think he views that it will almost all be recovered. Now, as it relates to the exact numbers, I haven't seen the final numbers yet. But the good news is we got the government open, people are back to work, and we have not seen any significant impact on the economy.
Is the president prepared to shut down the government again in 3 weeks if he doesn't get the money for the border wall?
Maria, I had dinner last night with the president, the vice president, Senator Lindsey Graham. We had a very good discussion on this issue. There's no question in my mind that the president, the vice president, want to do a fair deal. Lindsey has been terrific in helping to negotiate this. I hope the Democrats are sincere. If they are, there's a sincere deal that will include a lot of different issues that need to be resolved. But if they're not sincere, the president has all his options on the table, and he's determined that he's going to make sure we have border security.
What's the impact on the IRS? There's a lot of worry out there that people are not going to get their checks after April 15th as a result of this shutdown. What can we expect?
Well, let me just comment on both the Treasury, our bureaus, the IRS in particular. I want to thank the enormous number of government employees who came in and worked during the shutdown. I think, as you know, we had the ability to bring in critical employees. We never would have been able to do the sanctions that we've been doing over the last month without the hardworking people. And the IRS had a large number of critical employees to make sure that we were ready to open for business as usual. So we're ready to open for tax season. We're taking tax returns. We'll be ready for tax refunds. We'll have the phones restaffed. Now, let me just say that there's no question this time of the year, there's very, very heavy call volume. That's something we have to manage. I encourage taxpayers who have questions to try to go to the web first. But we are ready for tax season, and I can assure you that tax refunds will be paid as normal.
Okay, so tax refunds will be paid as normal. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
People are worried about that. Let me move on to the sanctions, and in particular Venezuela, because you've applied sanctions on the Venezuelan oil industry. Tell us specifically what the impact here is.
Well, sanctions are a very important tool in our national security portfolio. And when we look at national security issues, we look at economic tools, we look at diplomacy, we look at national security tools, military options. So there's no question that what we're trying to do is to cut off the money to the regime that should not be in power and make sure that President Guaido has access to funds and has access to the assets of the country, and to make sure we protect these assets for the people of Venezuela. It's really quite sad. This is a country that is very, very rich in oil resources, that has had extraordinary poverty and extraordinary humanitarian issues over the last issue.
And have you spoken with the opposition leader party about this? What has been the response so far?
I haven't personally, but I know the vice president has been in communication. I think the response has been very positive. We've been very careful in balancing this. I've spoken to many of the refineries over the last week. I wanted to make sure that there was significant capacity. There's a lot of oil on the water already in transit to the U.S. refineries. So I think on the one hand, we've been able to cut off Venezuelan oil going forward, but we're managing this with the U.S. refineries. We've issued licenses for the U.S. refineries to continue to operate. And if Venezuela wants to continue to sell us oil, which we'd like to buy, that money will go into blocked accounts and will be protected for the people of Venezuela.
So what about other industries in Venezuela? I mean, the sanctions are on the oil industry. What about other money and other imports? That they still get that?
We'll always look at additional sanctions. We want to make sure that things like medicine and other humanitarian issues continue to go to the people. But we'll always look at additional sanctions to make sure we protect the assets of the country for the people of Venezuela.
Why was it important that the president back the opposition leader?
I think he is the rightful leader of the country, the National Assembly, the Constitution. I think you know democracy is very important to the people of the United States, and we want to make sure that there are free and fair elections and that there is a proper democracy. That's very important to the national security of the United States.
Secretary, it's good to have you on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Secretary Steven Mnuchin joining us.